the first thing that I've done here is I have half filled or a little bit over half filled a test tube with some sodium thiosulfate crystals. And you'll notice that they're sort of cubic in nature and white. Next, I'm going to add a few drops of water to it. And what we want to do here is think about the solution that's been formed. So I've got some water here, that's my solvent, and it's currently dissolved some of the crystals that I have in this test tube. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add one crystal. And it's kind of difficult to see, but that crystal is just sitting just on top. Okay, on the other side. Okay, so that crystal just sat there. So this solution that's in here must be saturated because the crystal, the additional crystal that I added had no impact. Okay, it didn't dissolve. It just didn't disturb the solution that was there. What I'm going to do next is heat up the test tube until I've produced a solution. And I'm going to place a thermometer in it as well so that I can monitor the temperature throughout the next steps of the process. So what we're exploring here are different types of solutions, and as well we're looking at exploring what is called the seed crystal test. In the seed crystal test, we use to help us to identify the type of solution that we have, whether it's a saturated, unsaturated, or supersaturated solution. Okay, now you'll see that I'm making sure that I'm pointing the test tube away from myself. And I'm also kind of heating it, not just by holding it in the flame without paying attention, but sort of trying to heat it evenly and bringing it in and out of the flame. Now what we're trying to do here is prepare a solution, so a clear, colorless solution where all of the solute is dissolved. And what's kind of interesting about this particular solute is that I only put 10 drops of water, okay, but as you can see, the volume of my solution is much more significant than that. So there must be some other water that has been released and is now available to make a solution. And that's because the sodium thiosulfate crystals that we're using here are a hydrate. Okay? And your experience with hydrate so far with the copper sulfate hydrate, okay, is that when you heated the copper sulfate or the hydrate of copper 2 sulfate, the water evaporated. This is just a different kind of hydrate. And this one instead, the crystals end up getting dissolved in the water and the water sticks around. So what I'm going to do now is add a crystal to this. I'm going to observe what happens to the crystal. And my temperature, as you saw, was boiling, so my temperature is above 100 at this point. And you can see it just fell to the bottom and it disappeared. Okay, so that crystal has dissolved. And what that tells me is that the solution is unsaturated. Okay, it's unsaturated because it could dissolve additional crystals. There was less than the maximum dissolved, and so it's able to dissolve more. Now what I'm going to do here is cool this down. Okay, just using tap water, running tap water on the outside of the test tube. And I'm going to be quite gentle and try not to disturb the thermometer too much. And I'm monitoring the temperature. So it was well above 100 and now we're at about 65. Good. Let's water off. Okay, so you can see that I still have a clear, colorless solution. And what I'd like to do is figure out what type of solution this is. And how I do that is by using the seed crystal test. So I'm going to add one crystal. And I'm going to observe what happens. So we can see that very slowly. There's crystals forming. Okay, and now the temperature is shooting up. So the temperature is at 40 degrees, 45 degrees. Okay, so this process of crystallization is exothermic. Okay, and the type of solution that I have here is, it was supersaturated, okay, because I'm able to crystallize. Okay, so when you have a supersaturated solution and you add one more crystal, okay, it will cause crystallization. Okay, what I'm going to do now is add a few more crystals and see where they go. You can see the crystal that I just added. It's just sitting right there. Okay, so I've now returned to a saturated solution. So when crystallization happens, all of the extra crystals fall out of solution and we return to having a saturated solution.